Good evening. I hope you've had a good day. But I tell you what, I've had an absolutely hectic day, and the last kind of 6 months have been really, really crazy. So right now, I think I may have shared with you, or definitely shared it on social media in different places that we're building 40 houses in Boston, and the market's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we're trying to get hold of roof tiles, can't get them for love nor money. Timber frame, very difficult to get hold of. Bricks, we've had to order a whole year's worth of quantity up front in advance. It's mad. And then on top of that, you try and get hold of tradespeople. It ain't gonna happen. Pretty much, I mean, scaffolding, our scaffolding contract in Boston is worth about £160,000. Rang quite a few scaffolding companies, busy, can't take any more work on, bring us in 6 months' time. It's absolutely hectic out there. And if you're doing developments, whether you're doing flips or conversions or new builds, I'm sure you I'm sure you share that pain, and vice versa. But this evening, I want to focus on commercial conversions because that's one of my main strategies, and I've been doing that for since 2015 now, and I really enjoy it. And I thought I'd share some tips, advice with you in terms of how it's working out for me and some of the things you should be looking out for. So I'm not going to cover the basics in terms of why you're doing it, your goals, your objectives, what you're looking to do, how much time you have. I'm going to assume you've done that heavy lifting, or you ought to do that heavy lifting, and figure out why. I'm just going to go straight into doing a development or looking for a deal. So when you're looking at commercial conversions, of course, there's two clear things you're looking for. A, does it meet prior approval or permitted development, or will you need planning? That's something obviously that you need to consider. If it does need planning, my personal advice to you is that do a contract subject to planning, because otherwise you could end up buying a property and then you're incurring all the costs in terms of paying, if you've got a mortgage, paying the mortgage costs, and then going through planning, and planning doesn't go through, you're scuppered. Even trying to obtain the mortgage, obviously there's no tenant in there, it's not going to be easy to get a mortgage. So conditional contract subject to planning, go through the planning process. Once you've got the planning, then obviously you can start work. But where I see a lot of people going wrong, or not kind of doing enough research or their homework, is before you actually agree to do the deal, make sure you do a detailed analysis and an appraisal of whether or not the deal works. And I see people going wrong here all the time. And also, what they end up doing is they put the GDV figures down, so the gross development value, the end value, higher than it ought to be, because they think, oh, by the time I finish this in 18 months' time, this property is going to be worth 30 grand extra per flat or per apartment. And that couldn't be further from the truth, because we don't know what the price is going to be. Uh, Simple as that. So you have to make sure you're very objective. And I usually speak to 3 local agents in that area, sometimes regional agents, depending on which area I'm in. And then I take the average of the numbers that they give me in terms of what they think the GDV value is going to be. But the appraisal is extremely important. If you haven't got experience, speak to a quantity surveyor. They'll be able to do that work for you. Again, depending on the size of the firm and how well you know them. For a grant of £1,500, they'll run that appraisal for you. But hopefully, once they've done it once or twice, you'll then be able to at least do some or most of the work yourself. Once you've obviously done that and you've negotiated the price, whether it's a conditional contract or not, you then need to be looking at development finance. And again, you've got the high street banks, which start at 4.5% above base. Then you've got the likes of UTB, Hampshire Trust Bank, Aldermore, Shawbrook, who are around 6.5% plus entry fee and an exit fee. And then it starts going up higher in terms of bridging companies, or there are 1 or 2 lenders that I know who will give you 100% of the development costs, but they're going to charge you 1% a month plus a 1% entry fee and a 2% exit fee. Again, if the deal works, and there's enough fat in the deal, so to speak, then it's worth doing that, because you're not going to have to put any of your own money in there. But obviously, you have to fund the purchase of the asset. Now, whether you do that through somebody else with a JV partner, no money down, or other people's money, or whatever you want to do, that's something for you to think about, and it's a conversation for another time. Moving on from that, then obviously you're appointing contractors, and this is always an interesting one. Where I am right now, I use a quantity surveyor. So not only does that person do all the costings, they actually do all the engagement, all the instructions, all the contracts. So all of that stuff is handled by them. It makes it really easy for me. So and then we create packages for the different types of work. So we're not using one particular subcontractor. But obviously, if you're doing smaller deals, or the margin isn't there for you to have a quantity surveyor, then I'd say obviously shop around and then make sure you find a good contractor who can do the job for you, because that's going to take most of the time. That's where you're going to face most of the problems, the issues, the challenges. So you got to make sure you get the right contractor. And of course, once you've had the contractor, then it's about thinking about, are you going to sell or are you going to hold? If you're going to hold, obviously refinance, and hopefully you get all your money back. Sometimes a bit on top. So the last 2 deals that I've done, one was for 21 flats. We got all of our money back, plus just over 100, I think it's 110,000, or just call it 100 grand on top back. The more recent one that we did, we pretty much got all of our money back. So basically, in a nutshell, what's happening is you're doing the deal, refinancing, getting all of your money out, including any money that you owe investors, and you're sat there with however many units, let's call it 10 units, but it can be any number. You're sat there with them for free. Now think about it. If someone said to you, you can have 10, 15 flats free every single year, would you say no? I don't know. I know I wouldn't. I would take them on. Here, you're doing the work, but getting all the cash back, and you've got the properties. So it really is, in my view, and excuse the expression, a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it every single day if you could? Well, I think you should. But commercial conversions are definitely interesting. You can get your fingers burnt. A lot of things can go wrong. You can lose a lot of money very, very quickly. So it's about working with the right people and doing things in a very methodical, process-driven way. And they're one of the best property strategies by far. That's why it's my main strategy alongside new builds. And I just love doing them because every single deal is a very different deal. Now, if you're joining us right now, feel free to post a question, whether it's on tax or whether it's on property developing or property investing. Feel free to ask a question, and I will more than happily answer those. I do have a couple of questions that people sent in, because I get questions over the week that people ask, and I usually say I'll answer them on a Wednesday when I'm doing a live on social media. This seems to be obviously rather convenient and a good way of doing it. But before I do that, when you are doing the conversion, something which is very important are the tax consequences in terms of what happens at the end. So if you're going to hold on to the properties and not sell them, fine. But then if you decide to sell them, you'll obviously pay the tax. And if your intention is to sell them and you change your mind and you end up holding them or holding some of them, the ones that you hold, you're going to have to pay a dry tax charge. And let's assume it's a limited company, because that's where this comes into effect. You're going to pay a dry tax charge at the rate of corporation tax on the uplift in value. So let's say the whole deal per unit cost you £100,000. Each unit is worth £150,000. You've got an uplift of £50,000 per unit. You're going to have to pay tax on the £50,000 uplift at 19% current corporation tax rates if you hold on to the units. That ain't a very good feeling, by the way, and you're not going to like it, because you're not selling the property, you're holding on to it, but you're having to pay the dry tax charge. So it's crucial and it's important that you decide and you know exactly what you're going to do. Are you going to hold or are you going to sell? If you change your mind one way or the other, you have a problem. If you're intending to hold and then you sell, you can do holdover relief and then pay the tax when you sell, because HMRC know they'll get the money sooner or later because you're actively looking to sell the properties. The sticking point is when you were going to sell, you've changed your mind, you're going to hold, you're going to have to pay the dry tax charge. So be mindful of that. Coming on to the questions now, like I said, feel free to ask the questions, but I've got two here, one from Stephen, one from Imran. I'm going to answer Stephen's question first, Stephen Griffiths, who says, if I move to an LLP hybrid structure, that's basically having a limited company and an LLP together, so it's called a mixed partnership. So an LLP hybrid structure with my existing will my existing mortgage providers for my two rental properties have an issue with this? Also, when getting future mortgages, will it be a problem if I set up an LLP hybrid structure? Will the mortgage underwriters assess both the LLP and partner's income from the business full-time wages from jobs? So, okay, three questions there from Stephen. The first one is, are your existing mortgage providers going to have an issue? It depends how you move the properties into the LLP. So if the LLP owns the properties and then becomes the owner, then depending on the terms and conditions of your mortgage, Stephen, you're going to have to alert them. Because quite a few lenders who say it's a change in beneficial or legal ownership, you have to let them know. If that's the case, you'll have to let them know. If that isn't in the terms and conditions, then you don't have to let them know because they've not made it a condition. However, if the properties are going to stay in your name and you're introducing them into the LLP as capital introduced, then you may have a chance of not having to tell the lender. However, there's still a change in beneficial ownership. So if the terms and conditions say if there's a change in beneficial ownership, you have to tell us, then you'll have to tell them. So it's about looking at the terms and conditions and seeing whether your mortgagee requires that from you or not. Moving forward, you're just asking about future deals and saying, will that be a problem for future lenders? No, because all future properties that you buy, Stephen, you're going to buy through the LLP. So the LLP will be the legal owner, and that name will appear on land registry. It's also going to be the beneficial owner. So all future mortgages will be in the name of the LLP. So that will be easier for you. And the third one is when you apply for a mortgage, are they going to ask you for your own income and the income of the LLP? And the answer is yes, because when you complete the form, they'll obviously look at how much profit the LLP is making, and then we're looking at things like interest cover and the amount of rent that comes in. But also, they'll ask you for your personal income and expenditure as well, including sometimes your bank statements. They have to give all that information to them. I hope that helps you, my friend. Then the second question is from Imran, who says, hi Shaz, I have one buy-to-let alongside a job and I'm thinking of getting another one next year. That's another property. This will more than likely take me into the higher rate of tax. Would your advice be that I buy the buy-to-let in a company, or do you think it's not going to make much of a difference in my own name? Again, I can only give you a blanket answer, Imran, because I don't know your circumstances. But if it's going to push you into the higher rate of tax, what that means is Section 24 affects you, where you can't claim all your finance costs. So you'll end up paying more tax. In that situation, you're probably better off buying the property in a limited company. But it, again, overall depends on your strategy and what you're looking to achieve. But if the idea is to buy property in a limited company and then grow your portfolio, and you don't intend to extract much of the money out and you want to keep all the money in there and just keep recycling it, reinvesting it and growing it, then I would say it makes perfect sense for you to buy this second property in a limited company, and then of course buy all future properties in that particular structure too. What you ought to be thinking about as well, by the way, is the one that you've got in your name. Think about maybe moving that into a limited company too. You may have capital gains tax consequences, and if you've lived in the property, you may get principal private residence relief, so that might negate or cover some of that. Then there'll be obviously a stamp duty implication. It depends where you are. Obviously, if you're in London and your property is worth 750 grand, the stamp duty is significant. If you're living somewhere up north, for example, where the property is worth, I don't know, let's say £70,000, the stamp duty is lower. If it's a buy-to-let, then you'll have to obviously pay the 3% SDLT when selling into a limited company. But it could be well worth doing that exercise, especially if you don't own your own home and you're looking to buy your own home. You've not told me that in the scenario, but if you were, and once you've moved that property into a limited company, you no longer own any property in your own name. So I assume possibly you could be renting right now. So when you buy your own home, you won't have to pay the additional 3% SDLT. Right now, if you don't own your own home and you're renting, and you've got this buy-to-let, if you buy your own home, Imran, you're going to have to pay the 3% SDLT, the additional 3% SDLT surcharge. So I hope that helps. We don't have any other questions. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. If you have any questions later on, you can always type them in here, or you can email me and then I'll answer them for you next week. If you're on social media or YouTube, feel free to subscribe to my channel, Shaz Nawaz. On YouTube, I've got a podcast called Wealth Made Simple. And I'm also going to be running a series of monthly webinars starting from the 19th of October. And the first one is where I'm going to share with you how I did a particular commercial conversion and we saved over £100,000 in tax. And when I say in tax, I mean pure, simple, straightforward stuff using normal reliefs, allowances, and exemptions. Nothing crazy, no tax avoidance schemes, nothing dodgy, or all that kind of stuff, because I'm not into that stuff at all. I don't do that. This is all real, plain, simple, vanilla stuff, which works extremely well. And I'll share that with you in the webinar so you can see how it's possible. And you'll also see the massive difference it makes in terms of changing the profitability of a particular deal. So look out for that. I hope you have a wonderful evening ahead, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye for now.